And now it's my great pleasure to welcome Noel Farah, who is going to give us his presentation on character and heritage. Thank you, Noel.
Well, no, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Angela. And what an audience. Huge. It's just interesting when you're putting a local plan together, what a huge range of interests have to be represented. And I just need to say it is completely impossible to be able to try and distill character and heritage across this broad spectrum of interests that are in front of me. So I'm almost apologizing in advance for almost certainly missing critical and crucial points. I think my key role is to it's perhaps the same role that I have as the Essex Quality Review Panel chair, which I am, and I have had the pleasure of, I think, being able to broaden my knowledge and experience of the county through chairing the Essex Design Review Panel, that's now been in business now for over a year and has reviewed new development projects across the entire county, which has been illuminating, eye-opening, and provides a broader, wider context for me, which I'll no doubt allude to as I'm going through my talk. I'm a landscape architect by trade, and that will come through no doubt in what I say and in my bias. And I must say that tonight, because obviously I am Essex Quality Review Panel Chair and Uttlesford is clearly a part of the county, these views are my own. Whilst they are my own, I hold them as strong beliefs that underpin the work of my landscape practice, which I have run for 25 years, and prior to that, leading a landscape team in local authority. So understand the local authority context pretty well, which I was there for over 10 years as well. I am recently one of the new advisors to the High Street Task Force panel to aid with the perils that are High Streets face, which is a key issue. I'm a design council building expert. I sit on the Highways England strategic panel with regards to roads. And clearly I'm a director of my practice, and I've been through both the chair of policy and the presidency of the Landscape Institute, which is the professional body for landscape architects. So that's me, but my key role, I think, is one to enable, and I'm here to try and stimulate and enable a conversation. Next slide, Hayley. It's going to work beautifully. I know it's going to work beautifully. Thank you, Hayley. And so I think maybe the starting point of the talk today is, of course, character. What is character and what is heritage? And when we think in broad planning terms, and we must think in planning terms, this is a local plan that we are initiating the process of. What's interesting is that when you're looking at the definitions, and I chose to look at the definitions in the Cambridge English Dictionary rather than the Oxford English Dictionary, that was mainly a location thing. I've been pulled up on that previously. Character is the particular combination of qualities in people and a place that makes them different from each other. And it's the people piece that I think I want to perhaps talk about more. It's you, and this process of consultation has never been, I believe, more bought into, is more prescient, is more relevant than it has been previously. I think now people are realizing that they have a voice, and that has come through all sorts of changes, and they feel as if they do have a role in the democratic process, and never more so perhaps than at Uttlesford, where your councillors have come directly out of your public and out of your communities very, very recently, and now run the town hall and know your power and the best to you with that. So it's about people is character, and similarly with heritage. Heritage is, in definition, features belonging to the culture of a particular society, and this includes traditions, language, diversity, culture, and buildings that were created in the past and still have a historical importance. So the local plan for me must reflect community aspirations, and it is those communities that effectively are, I believe, the things that shape the places that we see around us and shape Uttlesford more than any other. Next slide. So I've had a quick look at just describing what I mean by that. These are actually Huguenot weavers' houses in East London from about 1740, but they are wholly determined by the functions that they served. The weaving communities lived and worked in these larger houses acting as small domestic factory floors. The most important thing being getting a lot of light, natural daylight, being their working bread and butter for their weaving, particularly silks in East London. And their fine work and embroidery was required, therefore, as much light to drench those buildings as possible. What's become interesting is that their character, therefore, and how they were built and their reason why they were built was one thing, which was the function of the people. But also now it has adorned, I think, very much a heritage interest to us, because they're, well, frankly, gorgeous. And who wouldn't want to live in one of those? And actually, they have become very, very desirable over time. And that trigger for me is actually heritage is all about quality. What we see in our heritage is the bits that survive are the bits that we want to see survive, because they are to some extent exceptional, even their roots. So it's about people that are shaping these things, and then quality. Next slide. This is Flitch Green, which is in Uttlesford. I was referencing it as Little Dunmow, which some of you may know it as. And this is also a space that has been entirely formed by function. This is a place between other places, if you like, that has emerged in the open countryside, and is, if you like, entirely formed by the car and by the convenience of people wanting to have their car on their front drive, and nearly all built, and is still being built, and it's a very, very recent place. But its entire form and the nature of its shaping is again driven by choices, by the choices that people want in relation to the convenience of their motor car, and the nature of individual homes on their own plots. And this is emerging not just here, but all over the UK, surrounding every town, because this is also very typical of suburbia generally. Next slide. But when you start to compare it in terms of all the other qualities of character, density, massing, form, rhythm, materialities, and the like, I've just gone back here and quickly just drawn a line around 500 homes, just over 500 homes, in this part in near Fournier Street in EC1 in London, which is back to our Huguenot homes. All, I would argue, incredibly desirable and forming places very close juxtaposition to each other, very simple forms that we understand and recognize and would probably talk about in terms of quality. Next slide. And that is imposing 550 homes, which is more than all the homes in the village of Flitch Green, which is below it. I would also argue they are both of a higher quality, and they are both going to trigger community, sustainability, carbon sequestration, and many, many other measures that you may wish to be able to make, which aren't being made in the community that is below it. Yet the community that is below it is newer, has been chosen, or has been offered, certainly, for our usage. Very, very different characters achieving very, very different things. These are, for me, the sorts of issues that need to be understood in relation to the choices that through this consultation people should be making with regards to informing the nature of the places they want in their local plan. Next slide. And this is, well, I suppose just about one of the latest parts of Flitch Green. Some of these still not yet sold, not yet complete, but already giving you a clear nature, contextual nature as to what it is. Are we happy with that? Are you happy with that? Is this the sort of place that you see aspirationally in the future? The local plan is a long-term document. It's about not just this year, next year, and the year after, but 10, 15 years' time. We will be almost certainly within the reach of this open plan. We will already be within the new government guidance on no fossil fuels in cars that you're going to be able to buy. We will probably be in a very different world, perhaps as different from today and then as from the Huguenot to now. That's the speed of change that we are seeing. And that, I suppose, also is therefore our challenge. How can we try and map and try and write a local plan that makes sense around that? And I would certainly bring here adaptability, flexibility. I would suggest that you look very much more at the principles and the nature of the outcomes that you want, rather than didactically looking at plans and master plans, which are physically trying to say, this is what the shape that it is going to be. I feel that local plans need to move away from their plan and much more into their outcomes and outputs as principles. Next slide. Here, an alternative, one that is recognized and awarded, and I am already nervous of touching on Saffron Walton too much in this presentation, but what I will say is that this is the Avenue, and the Avenue is very interesting from my point of view. It achieves a number of key goals. It is much more dense than the scheme that we just looked at. It is actually, it has 3 stories and flatted buildings and accommodation within it, but most importantly, it dwells around a piece of public realm. And it is that piece of public realm that I want to really talk about as an absolutely critical factor in being able to provide community. Okay, sorry, Hayley, next slide. This choice that you have, and NIMBYism and all of the pressures of the democratic process that we are going through are, I think, well rehearsed and well understood. But the local plan needs to be working very much in that context. And some of the logic that I believe needs to, I think, be very much addressed often is in the teeth of the not in my backyard community that exist in our existing communities. Next slide. This is Saffron Walton. Again, I apologize. But what I wanted to show here is that in orange are the allocated housing sites for Saffron Walton in your neighborhood plan. And it's interesting that the Avenue, which I showed you before, if anyone knows where it is, I don't have a pointer, but is actually very much within the urban context of the town, and is actually central to the town, and is a new development within the context of the town. But of course, the people of the town, through the democratic process, aren't electing to have other things built or changes made within their town core. They are electing through the ballot box to ensure that those developments are pushed to the outside. There is a number within this neighborhood plan. You'll be very familiar that Saffron Walton sits in a vale. And in that vale, you look over the town and can see a lot of the town from other parts of the town. It's a key landscape characteristic of this place. The more you smear your developments up the side of the town, the more you're changing fundamentally the character of this place. Moreover, the more you are pushing the countryside further away from the town centre. If you live in the middle and you carry on this process of building on the outside, you become further and further away from the countryside, which I think we are more desirous to stay close to and be able to have the enjoyment of. Next slide. You are not alone. I have studied many, many towns across the UK. This is very close to where I'm talking to you from, which is Kendal in South Cumbria. It's about twice the size of Saffron Walton in truth, 27,000 people here. But the truth is that the red and the purple are the new housing allocations for Kendal. Every time this process takes place, we will be having to deal with the next set of housing allocations shortly. Where are they going to go? Outside these red zones here? And if so, all of our towns, all across the country, not just in Uttlesford, are eating the countryside around themselves, moving the middle of the town further away from that countryside, demanding car dependency. That car dependency, because are you really going to walk from that top RN 181M, which is the site there? I happen to know that it's a good half-hour walk from that site into the middle of Kendal, and it'll be a fair distance from some of those walks in Saffron Walton, albeit a slightly smaller town. But this is where you end up, and the reality is cycling, walking are our primary healthy forms of transport that we need to be encouraging. The car is obviously going to change in terms of its use and format. The railway station is also in the middle of this town. And yet there is no new development near the railway station, which I have to say in Kendal is in a part of town that is very poor. And that also contextually is often like many places. So the nature of development through choice, through the choices that you're going to make in relation to the local plan, is making, I believe, very poor decisions in urban design, sustainability, and the enjoyment of the other people in the town, everyone else that's in the town going forward. Next slide. I'm going back here. This is more to amuse me, I think, really. The next piece I want to talk about is the importance of urban public realm. The public realm part of development is, I believe, the most central thing that you need to consider within your local plan. The amenities that people share, places where people can socialize and play safely, and where activities, festival, communication, striking, riot can take place. These are all necessary things. Socrates knew this. Next slide. Socrates is the father of Western democracy and Western cultural thinking. He observed, if anyone doesn't know this, Socrates could neither read nor write. It was Plato, who was his assistant, that actually wrote all that Socrates said and did down. And Socrates stood in the Agora, which is effectively the market square in Athens on the Panathinaikos way leading up to the Acropolis. And he stood and observed society. He observed in that society where people were trading. He observed how they speak, language, the changes in language and culture. And it is within the public realm that he recognized then, that we recognize now, that around which all of the key components of public buildings have come to pass. Here you can see the theatre, the temples, the markets, the lawyers, the stowers, and all of the rest of it, all clustering themselves around the public realm, because it is in the public realm where decisions are made and determining factors take place. Next slide. I use this is Barbara Hepworth, if anyone knows her as a sculptor, a remarkable woman. I mean, clearly Venice and St. Mark's Square in Venice is a rather remarkable place. But I think what's really interesting is she was doing a moquette for a set of sculptures of people that she was working on at the time. And she was in St. Mark's Square, and she noticed that the most significant observation I made from my work was that as soon as people or groups of people entered the piazza, they responded to the space. They walked differently, rediscovering their innate dignity. The reality is that if you look after your public realm, it makes you more human. It makes your personality bigger. It's where your children discover who they are. They do not do that at home. They do that in their manner, out there in the community. And therefore, the public realm is absolutely critical. Next slide. And God forbid, Saffron Walton again. But here we are, with or without the cars. This space comes out of that same culture of 400 BC. The town hall, where the power and the decisions are made, they know that it's the market traders in this space 100 years ago that were determining what actually is going down in this town. And interestingly, the arts and the academia and the knowledge in the library building on the other side of the square. These types of amenities are critical. I'm going to just go to one side. When I've been speaking to Essex County Council, the truth is that Essex has signed itself up to 180,000 homes over the next, between now and 2035. That's nearly 350,000 people coming into your county. That represents 3 times the largest town you already have in the county, which is Chelmsford, at about 120,000 people. Bath, which is a very lovely place, has about 85,000 people in it. 85,000 people where to be served effectively as a thriving, healthy, cultural, diverse community has 3 theatres, 2 bus depots, 19 bus routes, 2 town halls, 21 civic societies, 91 public buildings. The amenity, the public realm, and the spaces required for those societies need to be imposed and understood within your future local plans. I have said very clearly to Essex, how on earth are you going to, when you're looking at the development plans coming forward, other than the health centres and the schools, which appear through Section 106, how on earth are you going to house 360,000 more people? Next slide. This is the open space. I've gone back now. We're back in Flitch screen. In green, I have marked the open space within this development. The open space is all of exactly the same quality, which is effectively a short mown grass of very poor quality. There is very little play. There is very little amenity. There are no public buildings. There is one school. There is the academy, which you can see to the south, and there is a co-op. Other than that, as far as I'm concerned, this community does not meet or mix, or not easily, and is certainly not encouraged by the nature of its form. And therefore, I would argue that there is key indicators of character that need to inform this plan. Next. This, having a knowledge of the entire county, this is Beaulie Park Master Plan. I ask you to go, all of you, please go onto the Beaulie Park Master Plan website. There is a really nice info piece where you can click on it and go through all the different parts of the master plan. It's not entirely grim out there. This is a brand new railway station that they're bolting onto the existing railway line. They have really thought through this plan, and I believe it is rightly so. I know it's been awarded with the planning awards, but it is an example of good practice. I have looked at it, and certainly for me, it provides great encouragement. Next slide. Human society has been pulled apart by consumerism and materialism. For some reason or other, we seem to think that this is a good idea. This is what you see all the way through Flitch Green and everywhere. This is George Monbiot, but everyone else, there's been many people who've looked at this as a key issue. Why is it that we've suddenly decided that living in our own home with no walls touching each other, with a car that we can pull up to the front door is a good thing? All of the evidence, and I mean all of the evidence, suggests that this is an environment that does not encourage. This is poor for mental health, it's poor for community, it's poor for healthy lives. Next. And this is what we see. This is actually again up in South Lakes, but it could be anywhere. I've seen hundreds, nay, thousands of these. Classic developer, 54 units. I've got a field. I bought it off the local farmer. He's an easy seller. That link between the rural, I'm glad there's someone, I've written on this piece of paper, there is someone, I've forgotten the person's name, who's in charge of thinking about rural affairs. The link and the importance of joining together the needs, the dire needs of our rural community and our farming community, and that of our urban context could not be any stronger than in a place like Uttlesford. It needs to inform the local plan, how you grow your food, how you deal with local markets, how you create markets for those local industries that are the countryside and the management of that countryside, as well as wilding, biodiversity and the rest is critical. But what are we doing at the moment? A farm, which is an ecosystem in and of itself, here has hived off one field. Do you know that's like removing your arm? Anyone who understands farming knows that to remove a field that is part of a rotation or part of other rural farming systems knows that actually this is the farm. Farmers never used to sell. Farmers never sell. They sell now because that's how we've been treating our farming community. And I think that speaking to the rural affairs piece is a fundamental part of this. What you're actually looking at here, though, of course, is a perfect plot for a developer. There is no public realm at all, other than the road. They sell every part of the estate. There is actually that little green triangle in the top left-hand corner. There is a big pylon on the middle of there, which is the only reason why they haven't built a house on it, and they have designated that as the play area. As far as I'm concerned, this is not development that you can have nor encourage in your local plan. You have to have public realm, and you have to be prepared as a society to pay for it. Next slide. Another key point for me is technology. Technology is the answer, but what is the question? I don't know if anyone's ever heard that before. Cedric Price, a genius. The reality is this, is that we are in a society which is, I suppose, a post-enlightenment society, which believes that we have all the answers, that the answers will come. And that is one of the appalling reasons for the break on our choosing to address climate change, choosing to address biodiversity. We genuinely believe that we will invent something that will create the answer to all of our problems. But your role here, I believe, with the local plan is to say, what's the question? Technology is the answer, but that's not important. It's the question that is important. What do you want this place, the character and the heritage of the future to be? And once you have some clarity around that, then you can go to technology, which will provide you with the answer, not the other way around. Next slide. And this is an example on this slide of getting it the wrong way around. This won 22 awards, did Torgrove. This is in Thamesmead in South London. You can see the passive house chimneys on all of the houses. These are the very first passive house and some of the carbon neutral development in South London. You will also notice that the fence has been kicked in on that bottom house on the right-hand side, because it has not considered community. There are no trees in the middle of there. It is full of car parks in the middle of there. It is actually not a very nice place. It is not attractive. It is not desirable. It does not meet any of the social requirements. But technologically, it's won 22 awards. But I got to tell you, those awards are going to go down the drain when they demolish it, which I believe that they are about to do in a few years' time. And that isn't very green, is it? Next slide. So maybe the thing that's perhaps going to change the shape of your communities more than any other. It is coming. I hope it doesn't look like that. But the reality is, it is coming. And how we deal with the car and how we choose to feel about the car and how we enjoy its convenience, particularly in communities that aren't as well connected like Uttlesford, is really important. And I have to say, again, one of my thoughts to Essex Council, between now and 2035, they only plan to build 1/3 of a mile of railway. 1/3 of a mile of railway. I find that utterly staggering when you need to provide infrastructure for 350,000 people. Next slide. Do we not all really, is this what we dream of? And I think it is important that in your consultation, you do some dreaming. We need some serious dreaming. Is this the kind of world that we need to be in, where nature comes right the way up to your door, right the way up to the windows of your property? Do we not now feel post-COVID, that actually this is becoming a much more important topic? This is surely much more zeitgeist about the kind of place that we would like to live in. And we have started to design communities in my practice that are starting to take this into account. Next slide. So there are 3 images here. We are looking at homes in Parkland, typical suburbia in the middle, and perhaps a more balanced approach. The convenience of the car, because people want to park it on their front drive, means you have to have 60% hard surfacing in your development. You are determined and driven by the road. If you purely park your car, like in the image on the right, everyone is agreed to park their car just between 20 and 40 meters away from their house. The difference to the quality of life, feeling safe, nature, the amount of hard to soft ratio in your towns and cities is profoundly altered. You just have to become less selfish and recognize the other advantages that benefit us. Next slide. And I've done some work on this. This is a document which I shouldn't be showing you, but I'm showing it to you guys, which is starting to look at the pros and cons of what happens of homes in Parkland on the left. The bottom line is the pros of removing paving and the car from your home are vast. They are in relation to the community, in relation to sustainability, social inclusivity, health, safety. They are all vast. The only inconvenience in homes in the Parkland is you're going to have to walk a bit of a distance to go and get in your car. It is clearly a price worth paying anyone that has an altruistic bone in their body. Even the balanced approach, though, where the car can be relatively nearby, is anyone here who's been to Centre Parks, it's like going on holiday. You can have that holiday every day of the week without too much bother if you choose in your local plan to take what I think is a necessary and progressive approach towards the car. Next slide. This is my last slide. I've covered a whole range of different issues, all of which are going to, I feel, need all factors that you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about what is this future place, this future Uttlesford going to be. The good news is that there is a huge amount of information out there to support you in what makes a great place. It's really interesting. This is a study that I've looked at called Projects from Public Space, which is actually from America. It doesn't matter. You can look at Building for Life standards, Building for Life 12 standards in the UK, and you can look at many, many standards that have been developed all the way across Europe. And the interesting thing is, they're all the same. They all recognize landscape, public realm, sociability, uses and activities, access and linkage, and movement, connectivity, cooperation as the fundamental factors in design. Those are not found in your immediate past, and I must say are generally qualities, design qualities that I'm looking for in designs when I chair design review panels, not found often in what estate agents and developers are choosing to offer you. Your local plan is your main tool for deciding the place that you want and not the place that you are being offered. The planning system is not one that should react to what is put in front of it. The local plan is your opportunity to determine what you choose to see in front of you and whether it is acceptable or not. Thank you. That's me. I'm done, Angela.
Great. Thank you so much, Noel. That's really interesting and absolutely stacks to talk about there.